At around 11 p.m, Yasuko's mum was next door and she was still awake, and she was suddenly startled when she heard a loud bang coming from the Miyazawa household. She really didn't think that much of it though, and she went back to sleep fully unaware of the fact that her life was going to change for the worse the very next morning. Hi, my name's Yasmin and I make videos that are scary or disturbing in some way. They'll always be true stories. I post once a week. Anyway, I'll get on with the rest of the story. Setagaya is the second largest district in Tokyo, and within a small neighborhood called Kamisoshiyaga lived the Miyazawa family. Yasuko was a 41-year-old woman who worked from home. She was a type of tutor or teacher, and she was married to her husband Mikio, who was 44 years old at the time. He worked for a London-based marketing consulting company, and he worked remotely. The company that he worked for at that time was called Interbrand. They lived with their two young children. One of them was their daughter, who was 8-year-old Nina, and they lived with their son, 6-year-old Ray. The house, I think, was pretty unusual. So from the outside, it looks quite big, but on the inside, it's a very cramped 2-bedroom house. And it was so cramped that they even made the attic into sort of like a makeshift bedroom. They purchased the house in the year 1991, and the house backed up onto a park called Setagaya Park, and the children called this park Choo Choo Train Park. When they first bought their house, it was a really sought after neighborhood, but as time went on, the residents started to sell their land because the city of Tokyo was rapidly expanding, and it was actually building into Setagaya Park, which was becoming a skate park. This meant that by the year 2000, there were only 4 houses left on the street, and one of the houses just happened to be Yasuko's sister's house, whose name was Anne, and she lived directly next door to them. So her house was almost attached to the Miyazawa family's home. It was kind of like a townhouse situation, and they had this thick sort of wall connecting both houses, but you couldn't actually enter the Miyazawa family household from Anne's house. You had to actually exit her house and come into the front door of the Miyazawa family home to enter it. Most of the time though, Anne and her husband were away, so the house was actually occupied by Anne and Yasuko's mother. Nina and Ray would often go over to their grandmother's house and spend a lot of time with them, and Yasuko actually used Anne's house as an area to tutor her pupils. Since everyone was moving away from the neighborhood because of the upcoming developments in Setagaya Park, the Miyazawa family planned to follow suit. There was a lot of noise disruption, and Mikio even had a few run-ins with the skaters next door and told them off because they were just being too loud and making a huge ruckus. But unfortunately, the family never got the chance to move away because of the events that I'm about to tell you. It was Christmas in the year 2000, and there were some strange things going on in the neighborhood of the Miyazawa family home. People in the neighborhood that were just going for walks started noticing animals that were tortured. So some cats had their tails removed, and even rats had their tails cut off. There was no real explanation for this, but it was just something that the general public noticed in this area. Not only that, but on Christmas Day, Yasuko noticed a car parked directly outside their house. This was a really strange occurrence because their street is actually empty most of the time because there's no other houses there really, so there was no reason for someone to park directly outside their house. So why choose to park right outside somebody's house when the entire street is empty? A man that was aged between his 30s and 40s was seen on 2 consecutive days around the 29th of December at a train station near the house, and then the same man was seen at the train station closer to their house on the 30th of December. On the 30th of December, the year 2000, the Miyazawa family had a really normal start to the day. Yasuko and Mikio and their 2 kids were home all day, and they were really settling into the holiday spirit. Nobody had to work, the kids were just chilling out at home. Fast forward to 10:30 p.m. Mikio was on the first floor on his Mac desktop computer, just doing some work from home. His computer was situated so that when you enter the house, the desk is just right there on the side, and then there's a set of stairs that goes to the second story, where Ray was actually sleeping in one of the bunk beds in his bedroom. Yasuko and Nina were sleeping together up in the attic, so that makeshift third bedroom, and they were asleep on this sort of futon bed located in the shallow part of the attic. The only way to get to the attic is if you climb up the retractable wooden stairs. At around 11 p.m, Yasuko's mum was next door and she was still awake, and she was suddenly startled when she heard a loud bang coming from the Miyazawa household. She really didn't think that much of it though, and she went back to sleep fully unaware of the fact that her life was going to change for the worse the very next morning. Yasuko's mother woke up the next morning and she was expecting some sort of contact from her daughter, or like a phone call or something, but she heard nothing. They had some plans arranged very loosely, and Yasuko's mother gave her daughter some time to give her a call. But it was now around 10:30 a.m. and it was the 31st of December, so she dialed the Miyazawa household phone, but she had no idea that the phone lines had actually been cut, which is why she couldn't get through. Yasuko's mother left her house and took the short walk over to her daughter's house, and she rang the doorbell a couple of times, but nothing. She didn't hear a single noise from the house. Nobody came to the door. This is when the panic really set in, because Yasuko's mother hadn't heard from anyone. This was really unusual, so she started to scramble for her keys that she remembered Yasuko once had given her, just as a spare in case she ever needed to use it. She found the keys and she put it in the lock and quickly unlocked it. Once the door swung open, she was struck by how eerily quiet the house was. She took a cautious step inside and called for someone, but not a single person answered. Slowly, she made her way past the entry and the office area, and once she got to the base of the stairs, this is where she found Mikio's body at the bottom of the staircase, covered in blood and multiple stab wounds all over his body. She was disgusted and horrified at what she saw, to say the least, but she had to find her grandchildren and her daughter, so she continued to go up the stairs. She moved up the stairs really slowly, being super cautious because she had no idea if the person who did this was still in the house. When she got to the top of the staircase, that's when she was faced with a mother's worst fear. Yasuko and Nina were back to back in a fetal position in a pool of blood. They'd been brutally stabbed multiple times, and Yasuko's mother checked to see if there was a pulse, if they were alive, but they definitely weren't alive. There was only one more person that she had to look for, and that was her grandson. She went straight into his bedroom and actually saw that he was in bed. Although Ray didn't have any physical wounds on him, she could tell that he was also deceased. This is what's believed to have happened to the family at around 10:30 p.m. the night before. It's believed that the intruder actually came up to the house and scaled the wall on the side that was facing the skate park and climbed all the way up to the second-story bathroom window. Now, this bathroom window was quite small and it had a special screen on it. It's thought that they removed the screen and squeezed their way into the bathroom. Next, they would have crept into the room that was the closest proximity to the bathroom, which was Ray's room, and when the intruder got there, he would have seen Ray sleeping in bed and strangled him. It's thought that Ray put up quite a bit of a fight though, because Mikio at the time, so Mikio was downstairs just below Ray's bedroom, and he would have heard some sort of commotion happening from upstairs because something prompted him to rush upstairs to check on his son. Once he would have got to the top of the stairs though, he would have been face to face with the killer. It's believed that Mikio also put up a bit of a fight because he had multiple defense wounds on his body, and he also had the intruder's blood on himself, and it was actually all over the house as well. So this suggests that the intruder was actually injured by Mikio as well. The police believe that around 11 p.m. Mikio's body was hurled down the stairs, and this is what the loud thud was that Yasuko's mother could hear at that time. Mikio ultimately died from blood loss because of multiple stab wounds to the chest. It's known that the intruder had a sashimi knife when he was attacking Mikio because Mikio actually had fragments of the sashimi knife embedded in his skull. It's then thought that the intruder then went on to kill Yasuko and Nina. So he would have gone to the little staircase that was the foldable stairs, and he would have slowly climbed up them and entered the attic. And there he would have found Yasuko and Nina sleeping in the futon bed. And he began his attack on Yasuko and Nina. But since he realized his sashimi knife was actually broken, he rushed down the stairs to get a sharp knife from the kitchen to continue his attack. But while he was doing that, Yasuko found this as an opportunity to help Nina, and so she got lots of tissues and she added all this pressure on all her wounds to just stop the bleeding and control it in some way. She then picked Nina up and she carried her down the stairs in a desperate attempt to get away from the intruder. But it was too late. The intruder was still in the kitchen and he knew they were coming, so he intercepted them just before they got down to the stairs which led to the first floor. And he continuously attacked them with a knife. This is really sad, but Nina is thought to have died last and sustained the worst injuries because it seemed like she had also been beaten, so her first and third tooth were missing when they found her. Once the sick man murdered the entire family, he went straight to the kitchen and he went into the first aid box to bandage his right hand up due to his stab wounds and his injuries during the whole process. But then he proceeded to go to the fridge and he opened up the freezer and devoured some ice cream cups. So he opened up the ice cream cups and just ate them, and then he threw them in the trash willy-nilly just around the kitchen as well. And he proceeded to make tea with his fingerprints all over the teapot, all over the ice cream cups, the rubbish bin, the knives. This guy didn't care at all. This is super unusual and really disgusting, but after he basically devoured all the snacks in the kitchen, he left and went straight into the bathroom and he used their toilet. He didn't even flush though, so he left a big poo in the toilet, and there was a whole heap of evidence showing what he ate before his brutal attack, and investigators believe he actually spent a good few hours in the house after he had just murdered everyone. It looks like he even took a nap on the couch in the living room. And at around 1:18 a.m. there was a recorded episode of someone actually logging on to the internet. And it's thought that the intruder had gone onto Mikio's desktop computer downstairs, and judging by the history on the computer, he went through just bookmarks that Mikio had had on his computer. It even looks like he tried to complete like an online purchase for like a future theatre ticket or something, but it didn't really go through. I don't know what was running through this guy's head. But for one reason or another, he also went through Mikio's box of documents that were sitting near the desktop computer, and he seemed to collect all of them and threw them all in the bathtub. He threw a number of other things in the bathtub too, which included Yasuko's 2 handbags, a bloodied towel, and some house keys, along with some more empty cups of ice cream, which were also thrown carelessly into the toilet on top of his poo. All the evidence of his saliva and his spit and his blood and his poo were all over the house. The weapons were there, the broken sashimi knife was left at the house, the kitchen knife from the Miyazawa family was also at the scene, but nobody knows who this guy was. So what investigators did was they wanted to trace back where the sashimi knife came from, because they believe it didn't come from the Miyazawa family. The intruder would have likely brought this weapon there with him. And they actually found that there was a recent sashimi knife that was sold at one of the supermarkets nearby, and it must have been the perpetrator. But the investigators had no way of identifying who this person was by just their receipt of buying the sashimi knife. Investigators noticed a few other things. So there were footprints everywhere, and the shoes he was wearing was deemed to be a white Schlesinger shoe. It was like a sneaker, and this shoe was only able to be purchased in Korea purely because the sizing was only available there and not in Japan. He left a bunch of clothing at the house as well, and this included a grey crusher hat, a purple and white top, black jacket, black gloves, stripy green scarf, a forest green sort of fanny pack, and a black handkerchief. From the black handkerchief, they could determine that the killer was most likely using a cologne called Durco Noir. They also looked inside the fanny pack and investigated it a little bit further. They found some grip tape in it, which is typically used for skateboards. They found very short dark brown bits of hair in the bag, but most interestingly, they actually found little bits of sand traces in the bag too. And when they traced back where the sand could have come from, it actually led them to a United States military base, which was totally unexpected, and there's no explanation for this to this day. Here's an example of what they think the killer would have been wearing the night of the attack. No one knows who this man was, why he targeted this family, and initially investigators thought it may have been to steal money, because he'd taken about 150,000 yen, which equates to around 1,000 USD. But there was also money left behind at the scene, so about 195,000 yen was left behind. So if he was after money, why didn't he take the whole lot? The DNA was tested 1.3 million times with not a single match. Japan also asked South Korea to help, but they declined to provide any help. It's thought that his age was between 15 and 35. His height is thought to be around 5'7". They think this purely by just judging the strength that you need to scale a wall to get to the bathroom of that height. They believe it must have been a male within this age group and that height. They also think that it was a male because of the hair that was left behind. The investigators sort of thought, what other motive could there have been? And they came up with the fact that the family may have had some personal issues with this person. The way in which that they were all murdered was so brutal, especially Yasuko and Nina, who were both stabbed in the face. And it's a very personal type of attack. But unfortunately, we may never know the answers despite the heap of evidence being left behind. It's been years and people are still looking into this case, but there's been no resolution. If you found this video interesting, then please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. I will be posting every single week videos that are similar to this, so follow along if you like, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!